My name is Steve Taylor, and I make music.
Hi there, I'm Mike Forts, and welcome back to Parlour to Parlour. We're taking the series full circle this week, returning to the Bay Area to meet another busker who, like the series' opening artist Chris Robley, also happens to be a bearded fan of classic 70s pop. Steve Taylor is yet another artist I met via my association with Performer magazine, and his album Has the Size of the Road Got the Better of You drew me in with its vintage synth sounds and smooth vocals. Here Steve talks about how he started busking in April of 2008, following encouragement from some friends who had some success with it, and from there we'll hear about how Steve's 8-song album racked up credits to 10 different engineers.
I had a Help and Still piano, which is this 64-key piano, which is kind of a small-scale piano, and the keyboard folds up. And so I was like, this could be sort of my gimmick, but like a really cool gimmick that sounds good, and that, you just don't hear a real piano with people busking. So I just started bringing that out, and like I got a license to play at Fisherman's Wharf, and it was going really well. I was getting to a point where I was making like $50 an hour doing it, and I was playing for like 2.5 or 3 hours, so it wasn't like I was working 8 hours a day and making like $500 or anything like that, but like I was making enough money to live off of after a short time. We recorded with this engineer who like turned out to be really negative, like vibey. Like he wanted to produce the album, and he didn't really tell me what he wanted like financially, and then like I think it was like a few weeks before we were going to start, he was like, oh well, I want like 6 points on the record, which from what I understand is like a really big percentage of it, and he wanted some like contractual stipulation to like have right of first refusal for the next record, so he would be able to charge or demand whatever he wanted with the next record to produce it. And I barely even knew this guy. He like gave me a reel, and it was like, it sounded fine, but like it wasn't like super major stuff that he'd like done. So anyway, I was like, well, I'll just use you as an engineer, and like the whole scene there just had like a really dark shadow. Like he was like really just like seething with like rage, like the whole session. So that we recorded 10 or 11 tracks with that session, and it just didn't sound very good. Like it wasn't. It sounded all right. It sounded fine, but it just wasn't like the chemistry or the vibe I was looking for. So, but like I'd hired all these guys and paid them a lot of money, and like I was like, shit, should I just put it out? And I ended up bringing them out again. We recorded some more tracks, which had a little bit better vibe, but didn't have what I wanted. I didn't have a budget. Like I just spent all this money, and like so those are the first 2 sessions in Sacramento. Then I was renting a space at Soundwave and having my friends come over and engineer, and that stuff was turning out. Some of it was turning out good. By that point, I was just playing all the instruments myself on it. So that was like a lot of my friends came in and were working on it. So that was like a good handful of the engineers.
And as it turned out, besides 2 songs from the original sessions, all the rest were re-recorded at San Francisco's tiny telephone studio, and a little bit at Steve's home. Much of the soul vibe that you hear in Steve's music comes from his love of gospel music. Here he talks about how he dug deeper into gospel by playing guitar in local San Francisco churches.
I've always been really drawn to gospel music. Like I think it's just like such a raw personification of soul. Like just everything from like the harmony, like the chord changes, to just the way chords are voiced, and like the vocals and everything. Like I'm just really into that. Like I really like really heartfelt music, and so I'd been wanting to get involved in gospel music, and I wasn't specifically thinking about playing at a church, but I was riding my bike home from work one day, and it was in the Western Addition area, kind of by Fillmore, and I heard some gospel. I heard like the Hammond B3 playing, which is the organ, like the gospel organ, and like I heard some people playing, and so I just like parked my bike outside and was listening. Some people came out, and one of them was like, do you want to come in? We're just jamming. And I was like, yeah. So I went in and was listening, and I was like, hey, I play guitar and keyboards, and like I just live a few blocks away. So they were like, "I'll get your stuff," and so I got my guitar, and I think I brought like a clavinet or something, and we were just jamming. I met my friend Anthony, who's like musical soulmate #1, and he introduced me to a few different churches that I played at. So I was just playing lead guitar kind of stuff, like a mixture of like Dwayne Allman slide guitar simulation, like kind of southern rock kind of influence stuff, and then like adding like sort of my own like progressive rock type inclinations, like doing stuff with the volume effects, and it like it sounded pretty good. I thought, and like people were really responsive, and like I'm like this white dude playing in like pretty much entirely black churches, and it was like super fun. Like
Okay, now we'll take a quick peek at a few of Steve's vintage keyboards down in his basement practice space.
This is a Melody Pro, which is pretty obscure, mid-70s, I'd say like 1976, 77, something like that. It's a very small piano, 64 keys, and it has something called a help and still pickup, which is kind of like a magnetic pickup like you'd have in a guitar, except it's like got longer bars to cover all the strings. So you can play it acoustic, or you can actually plug it in, and it's really cool. You can run it through effects really easily without miking it and stuff. So like I could plug it into this Leslie speaker, and it sounds. This is my Frankenstein Hammond, which is basically an A100 chopped down. It doesn't have the bottom. So this is about as portable as a Hammond's gonna get. It's still about 200 something pounds. I don't know, 240 or something like that. Has a great sound. It's running through this Leslie 145, which I totally scored on. Like this Krumar I used on almost every song of Has the Size of the Road Got the Better of You. I was and I still am really obsessed with this sound, this analog string synth sound, which you hear a lot on 70s recordings. This is the Rhodes, also known as the Fender Rhodes. So this is the brass sound on this keyboard too, which I used on Aquafish.
You can almost hear history unfolding through those instruments. Steve is working on a new album, which he intends to release as an acoustic project. As it turns out, I was particularly keen on having him play Mystery, a song from his first album that he plays on acoustic guitar, so check that out in the performance footage as a little hint of things to come from Steve. Thanks for hanging with us, and I'll see you one last time this year as we wrap up the season next week with a very special closing episode that delivers on the international flavor that I promised to you back in June. Enjoy.